Our second part of this 2D data visualization demo, and today we'll introduce the interactive part of this visualization. So this is what we will achieve. Here is a button called switch graph, and here is a slider, and basically we can switch the graph from like the circular graph to the bar graph by click on this button. And so we can see how the same data sets and visualized in two different kinds of graphs, and let the users to pick whichever one they want to explore. And also there's a slider. When we hover over this slider, and we can change the range data mapped. And when we move to the right part, and we can see the trends more clearly. And we hover over those points, and we can see the sea level change data and also the date. Okay, let's switch back to the circular graph, and it's functional like similar. So when we have the mouse hover over those points, and we can see the date and also the data points, the sea level change data. Okay, so this is what we have, and basically we explore like two different kind of interactivities we can achieve on the web-based data visualizations. First one is using the slider to map the data to different kind of range, and so that we can explore the individual data, and we can also explore the trends. And secondly, we use switch graph to explore the same set of the data sets in different kind of format, different kind of transformation, and let the users have diverse kind of experience. This is what we achieved in our last week's technical demo. Firstly, I want to create another JavaScript file called functions.js. Okay, add file, and then let's copy the customized function we created, the chart info and find minimum and maximum data, those two functions, to the function.js, our new JavaScript page. And do not forget to link the new page here. So why we do this is basically we need to organize our code to make it clear. Once our code gets longer and longer, if we only have one JavaScript page, it will be super long page. So we need to create some hierarchies of your program. Okay, let's create and name it functions.js, and let's save it and let's run it. Okay, so everything function properly, and let's see the full screen. Okay, so let's create another JavaScript file called graph.js, because we're gonna have two graphs, so I want to separate the draw graph functions here. And let's go back and let's cut the program from here. Let's cut it and let's paste it in the graph. And let's create a function called draw. And let's paste this whole lines of the code to here. Okay, let's use the tidy code. Okay, so do not forget to link our new JavaScript page to the HTML page. Okay, so graphs, let's run again. Okay, so there's nothing showed up. It's because we didn't include the customized function here. Draw circular graph. Okay, let's run it. Okay, we need to cut this part, also paste it into here, because it's a local variable we cannot put outside of the function. Okay, so everything functional properly right now. Okay, so now we have everything. Let's check our full screen view. Let's refresh it, and we forgot to save, and let's refresh. Okay, so we have everything, right? Okay, so next step is I want to create a customized button and customized slider. We already know in P5.JS they already have the built-in function for create slider and to create button. Let's go to the slider page. And there's also button. If you click on the button, and yeah, you can redesign this button using CSS code. But today I will introduce how you can create a button by yourself. And let's go to the functions. Let's create a function called function new button. Okay, firstly, let's create a rectangle, right? So a button is a rectangle. Where should we put the rectangle? X position, Y position, width, and height. And let's include the parameters here. Stroke weight, black, stroke weight, let's put 1, black. Okay, so we create a rectangle, and then the next step is we need to create the text inside of this rectangle, right? So let's do it. Text size, T size, text size, and let's include the text size here, and text content string with the text and the position, X and Y, and let's include the T here, and okay, so that'll be all. Include this new button in the draw function so that we can see it on canvas. Let's go back to the mains, and we say new button. Let's create a variable. Let's cut this to here, and variable button X, button Y, width, height. So let's give those variable a value, okay? Oh, before that, let's cut diagram. So basically, we can give values to those variables in the setup function, because we can give those values when the system initializes it, right? The button X will be the diagram X, button Y. Okay, so let's give it button X, button Y. Okay, so noticeable that here inside of the brackets, we have those parameters, right? So those parameters should be in the same sequence, same order with how we define it. So X, the first parameter means the X position of the rectangle, Y means the Y position, W means the width, height, and T means the string of the texts, and also T size means the text size. Okay, so let's run it and see. We already have something showing up. We don't want to have the stroke weights for the text, so let's say no stroke and fill black. And for the text align, and noticeable that we can add another center to make this text not aligned on the bottom of the text, but aligned in the center, both in X and Y axis. So center and center. Okay, looks better, right? Okay, so next step is how we make this button interactive. See, if we hover over this button, the button's color will change to the blue. And also noticeable that the cursor initially is cross icon, and when we getting close to this button, it changed to the hands. Okay, so we need to use the distance function we already introduced last time. Between the mouse X and the mouse Y, and X and Y is smaller than the width divided by 2. And we will fill, so this means fill with transparent blue. Okay, we'll change the cursor to hand. So this is the built-in function. There's many different ways we can create with the cursor. If you search on the reference page, cursor, and it's actually have hand, move, text, weight, it actually gives you an example. So see, we can explore different parts of the cursor. And this is very important to change the cursor to hand, is because we want to create a human-centered design. When the users see the cursor change from the cross to the hand, they can automatically know, like, okay, this button can be clicked. So this is very important visual hint. Then the cursor will be cross and no fill. Let's delete this no fill and let's run again. Okay, let's save and full screen version, and let's refresh it. The button works fine. Okay, so the next step is I want to create a slider. Another function called new slider. Again, we can fill the slider in black and no stroke. So we create a circle. It's a pointer. The circle size will be slightly larger than the rectangle. So let's go back to see the results. So we want to create a line, a rectangle. It can be a rectangle or a line. So either way works. And there's a little like circles as a pointer, and we can drag the circles to different position of the slider. We draw these circles, and noticeable that the circle is also interactive. So when we getting closer to this circle and we click, the circle turns red, and when we release our mouse, it turns back to the black. So basically the color is a variable. So we give this color a variable C, and let's set the parameter. Let's say if the distance smaller than width divided by 2, and then the cursor is hand, else cursor is cross. Okay, so let's include this slider in our main file, and let's say new slider, and again slider X, slider Y, slider width, slider height, circle, circles X position, and circles Y position. Let's define those variables first. Create the if condition. So if the mouse is getting closer to this little pointer and the mouse is pressed, so when it gets close and it is pressed, then the circle X will follow the mouse X position, right? And the circle Y will stay on the slider, so it will be slider Y. And what is really important is the color will be red, else the color will be black. Let's define the color C, and in the setup, let's say color. So the initial state of this circle is black, and slider X is actually button X. Slider Y is slightly below this button, and slider width, let's set it 400. Okay, slider height is 0.5. Okay, let's run it. Okay, something went wrong. Okay, we haven't defined the circle X and circle Y, sorry. Circle X is slider X, and circle Y is the Y position of the circle is also the slider Y. It's set the initial state, and once the mouse is clicked and it's closer to the circles, the circle X and Y position is actually following the mouse position. So let's get closer to the slider and let's click and drag. Okay, so it's following my mouse position, and I release my mouse, it turning back to black. We create those two interactive components, and let's get back to the full screen version, and let's save it first, and let's get back to the full screen version, and let's refresh, drag, slider works, and switch graph, it works. So the switch graph is basically when we click on it, it switched from the graph 1 to the graph 2. Now we only have one graph, so we need to create another graph, a bar chart. Let's see our result first. So our result, we have this bar chart. It basically mapped the data from the 1993 to 2015, distributed on a horizontal line, and in the graph.js file. And let's create another function called function bar graph. We can use part of code in the draw circular graph because it shares similar part. Let's create a for loop first. We create this for loop because we want to access every components in the second column and in the first columns. So basically we need to create a list of rectangles. We need to do some calculations. Firstly, let's set the width of each rectangle to be 0.2. And let's set the gap. Let's do some calculation. The gap between each rectangles will be, basically we use the width minus diagram divided by 2 is because we want to set this gap to fill out the space from here to here. We want to manage the width of bar and to get the gap. Instead of using rectangles, we can use line. Basically it's the same results. So we use lines. When we create a line, we need to create the point 1 to the point 2, right? So the lines point 1 will be here, here. Let's go back. So point 1 will be distributed on the horizontal line, and point 2 is defined by map the data to a specific range. And point 1 will basically is the stroke weight of the line and multiplied by I and gap. Let's offset the graph a little bit because I don't want the graph to overlap with the texts. This is the first point. Then the second point. So Y position will be basically the same. However, we need to add the offsets of the data mapped. So H is the height of each data. And we will calculate the H later. And let point 2x is same with the 1x. Okay? So for the H, we can copy this map function to here. Okay, so we basically map the values of the sea level data from the minimum of it and the maximum of it to the other range. Basically, this is the height, this is the length of the lines, the stroke weight. And let's draw the line. Basically, the line is the bar graph. Line is stroke, black, and line from the point 1 to the point 2. And let's run it. Okay, we didn't include this customize function in the draw function, so we cannot see it right now. So let's get back to the main. And let's comment out this draw circular graph, and let's create a draw bar graph. And let's run it. Something went wrong. Let's see the console. Cannot find H. We need to define the H in the beginning, okay? So let's say, or we can make a local variable. So let's define H here. And let's run again, include let. Oh, we need to put it inside of the for loop. Okay, run again. Okay, yay, we can see the bar graph. However, I feel like the last data of the data sets should have a gap with the edge of the canvas, right? So we create a gap. 40 is a new gap on the padding. It's on the right side. Okay, so now we have a padding. It looks much better, right? Create a blue line to separate each year. See the results? We have a blue line to separate each year. We have the year's numbers showing up here. Okay, so we need to create an if condition. Basically, we can actually copy this part. Draw the line here to here. We delete this part. We use modular. We already introduced in our last technical demo. It's very important. So basically, if can be divided by 12 and the remainder is 0, then we will color this line in blue. And we will change our stroke weights to something else. Let's change the stroke weights to 1. And if not, then our stroke weight will be W is 0.2. We create line here, and we delete this. Delete this. Delete this. Okay, so we have blue lines showing up. And next step is we need to have the year, we need to have the text showing up below each indicators. Let's create a local variable array. We actually extract the first number of the string from the first column of the table. So the year is actually the first number of the string. If we get back to the CSV file, we only extract the first number of the string. So we can use getNumber functions, and we access every row in the first column and only get the first number. Year. And position will be slightly below the indicator. Text size. Okay, let's run it. See, it works. And we need to delete the stroke weight for the text, so we need to rearrange the orders. Basically, we don't want the stroke weight to affect on the text, so let's put the stroke weights no stroke here. Run again. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we have everything showing up. It might look really messy in this preview function because we want it to function well in the full screen. Let's save and refresh the full screen. Okay, so everything looks fine, and we have this indicator showing up. Okay, so next step is we want to draw the points. See, we have the points, and we have a little line to connect the points to show the trends. We also have like the interactive components of hover over and to see the exact data, also the year, the date of that data. And let's create the connection line. Oh, firstly, let's create a circle. And the circle is basically on the data points. And the size of the circle will be 3. Okay, so we have the circle showing up. And then we create a connection line function. So every time we create a line, we need a first point and second point, right? So let's say let P1x as actually the same position with the data point. And the second point of this line will be P2x. Let's copy, paste it here, and let's make it +1. So it's connect with the next point. So basically it's the same with the first point, but we need to add 1 to the I because we need to access the next point compared to the current point. And let P2y. And instead of using h, we need to clarify the details of this h and add +1 because we will need to access the next point. So +1 here. There is a problem here. If I is the last point, we don't have the next point, right? So we don't want to exceed the whole array. This is very important. We need to add an if condition. So if I smaller than the number rows -1, which means we only access last 2 points. And let's using tidy code. Let's create this line here. Line is P1x, P1y, P2x, P2y. Okay, so we have lines connected each points. You might not see it clear here, but we can see it in full screen. Okay, see, we have the lines connected them. We need to make this line slightly thicker because we want to see the trends. Let's set the stroke weight to be 0.8, and let's get the stroke to be blue. Run again. Great. let's say if we hover over, it will change. So basically we already do the hover functions in our last technical demo. So we just need to copy this part, paste here. We need to delete this circle, so because we actually made these circles interactive components and we put it here. We need to change the point x to 2x. Okay, so let's run it. Something went wrong. Let's go back to the graph. Okay, we have an extra bracket and let's delete it. Okay, 2 point. The interactive components works. And let's fill. Okay. I don't want to have the information showing right above this bar graph because it will be overlapping and really distracting and I cannot clearly see the information. So I want to move the whole text part in the upper part of the canvas. So we need to change the position, change the Y position, okay? So let's say the text to be 90 and here is here, and let's run again. Okay, much better, and let's save it. Okay, so we already have this graph successfully showing up. And the next step is I want to move the text, the information slightly to the right side because right now it's a little bit overlapped. In the grid system of design, it's not permitted. See, it's overlapped. If we make the slider works, the data might overlap with the text. Okay, so let's go back to the function and chart info, and let's say the width to be 50 here, to be 50, so the text starts from the 50. And we also need to change the rectangle mode because the whole text is in a rectangle and we need to change the rectangle mode to corner, the full screen version. Okay, much better, right? And the next step is we need to map the slider value and map the switch graph button value to the whole graph and to make it functional. Graph we see the rectangle is actually offsets in the information. So let's get back to the editor and we need to fix this. Let's go to the graphs and in the text here, we need to make the rectangle in the center. Let's run again. Save. Let's see the full version. Okay, it fixed. We need to map those values. Let's go back to the slider. Okay, so to map this value, one thing is really important is basically we just need to change 205, this value is because this is where we map the value of sea level change. The minimum of sea level change is negative 3.5 and the maximum is 79.5, and we map it from 0 to 205. So basically here, this is the number we need to map it to slider value. Let's do some mapping things. Let's say we create a local variable. Let map value, the circular x. This is the indicator on the slider. So basically map this value from the slider x minus slider width divided by 2. Basically this is the left points of the slider, and to the slider x plus slider width divided by 2. So this is the right point, the maximum number of the slider, and we map it from these two numbers to 25 to 400. Let's change this to map value and let's run again, and let's go back to the main page and comment out the bar graph and show the circular graph, and let's run it. Okay, so now it's working. So basically we map the position of this indicator to the range the data gonna map to. So if we move this indicator to the right side, we can clearly see each individual data points. Okay, so let's do the same thing to the bar graph. Let's copy this mapped value and make it here, and let's map it from 0 to 400, and let's say mapped value here, and go back to the main page, comment out the circular graph and show the bar graph. Let's get back to the graph and let's see. Okay, so because we didn't map this here and we really need to be cautious about this, we need to also put the mapped value here for the second point of the connection lines, and now we have it works. The next step is to make the button works. To make the button works, I already introduced in the first week technical demo, is to create a boolean. So let's get back to the main page and let's say let show graph. Let's show graph 1 is true. If we turn on this application, we will see the first graph firstly, and when we click on the button, it will switch to the second graph, and when we click on the button again, it will switch back. So firstly, the initial state of the first graph is true. Okay, let's define it. If show graph 1 is true, and then we draw circular graph, and else, which means if the show graph 1 is false, and then we definitely show the bar graph. Okay, let's run it, and we cannot see anything because we haven't mapped with the mouse pressed. So let's say if function mouse pressed, and let's say if the distance of the mouse X, mouse Y with the button X and button Y is smaller than 15. This is something I randomly come up, but you can do some calculations. And then the show graph will switch to the other state. If it's true, and then we'll switch to the false. And if it's false, you switch back to the true. And if the show graph 1 is true, then we will see the circular graph. And if it's false, then we will see the bar graph. Let's run it. Okay, so we don't need the space here. Oh, capital G. Okay. So it's functioned properly. Okay, so let's save. And let's get back to our final result and let's refresh the window. And let's hover over this button. Yay, we can switch back. Right? And when we hover over those data points, we can see the individual data. Move the slider, we can see it mapped to different range. Let's try the slider here. Okay, so see something went wrong. In the chart, in the circular graph, the rectangle is offset. So let's get back to the editor and let's do the last twist. Function, graph, and rectangle. Let's find out the rectangle. So if you cannot find the rectangles, you use Command F, or you use the find and you say rectangle. And okay, so we see the rectangle is here, and then let's set rectangle mode. It's center. So I want to point out this the find